All right, Joel Gausten here from joelgausten.com. I am very excited to have my guest join me for this, and I want to say how honored I am to be joined by the first singer I ever saw perform live in my life.
Wow.
Joining me from South Dakota, Mr. Ron Keel. Ron, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity, Joel. It's great to talk to you, and I'm happy to be here. What was that first show that you were mentioning?
I saw you and Bon Jovi at the Meadowlands in New Jersey in 1987, the Slippery When Wet tour.
That was a good one to catch, man. Bon Jovi at the Meadowlands with Keel on their home turf, and some great memories from that tour for sure.
Yeah, and my first time at an arena, I was 10 years old, and you guys were the first band I ever saw in that
Wow.
setting for a young kid, who grew to love music. I certainly thank you for being one of the gateways to my life's work in music, as a musician and otherwise. So
Well, I appreciate that, man. And I know that there were at least 18,000 young girls in the audience and one dude, and I guess that must have been you.
yeah, that's probably me. I was all the way in the back though, so you probably didn't catch me. But
That's awesome, man. Well, I know you've been requesting an interview for a long time, and I've been putting you off until the new media cycle starts with the new album, Keel World. Lots to talk about, so thanks for your patience. Let's do this.
yeah, absolutely. I'm glad we waited because obviously we have a lot more to talk about now.
Yeah.
You mentioned Keel World, that's your upcoming album. It's out on August 2nd on your label, RFK Media. There's a vinyl issue of that as well coming out on Black Friday. And well, let's kind of start there because Keel World is a very interesting release. It collects music from a variety of your current bands as well as your past bands, but this is not a compilation. This is not a greatest hits record. This is all, well, more or less all new material from a host of groups that you've been a part of over the years, which is a great concept that is something not many artists have done. So, kind of walk me through the idea of this and how the logistics worked out, where you reunited with so many people from throughout the years to make this album a reality.
Well, I enjoy the challenges of doing stuff that most people can't do or won't do, and Keel World is like that. It is all new material, all new recordings, and well, there's a Black Sabbath cover on the record, which I know you want to talk about, but everything else on the album is all new, brand new music from my primary bands, Keel, Steeler, Ron Keel Band, IronHorse, solo material from Ron Keel, the Metal Cowboy, and some country music as well from Ronnie Lee Keel. So it tells the whole story of my life in all new music.
Excellent. And why now? Why at this stage of your career did you decide to present this collection in the way you have?
It kind of just started as we started writing in 2020, and some of these songs were during the pandemic when I was writing the initial songs for the album, and it was going to be a Ron Keel Band album. It's time to put out new product. We did Fight Like a Band in 2019, followed that up in 2020 with the South by South Dakota Southern Rock Tribute album. It's time to start writing a new original album. And then I went to dinner with some friends. It was a surprise birthday party. And the gentleman across the table, he was the father of the guest. It was a surprise birthday party. And he sits down at the table and shakes my hand and says, "Hey, Ron, what's going on in Keel World?" And I thought, right, uh-oh, that's my next album. And we had done a couple of events called Keel Fest. In 2019, we did a show with Keel, Steeler, and Ron Keel Band all on the bill together in Columbus, Ohio. We did that same concept again last year in 2023, Keel Fest, where it's a 3-hour show and I'm fronting Keel, Ron Keel Band, and Steeler. I thought, Keel World, that sounds like Keel Fest on record. Why don't I invite all my friends to the party? And the cool thing is, most of these guys, there's only a couple of people in my career that I'm not still brothers with or friends with. And the guys in Keel are a family, a brotherhood. The guys in the Ron Keel Band for the last 10 years, it's been my vehicle for everything that I do. And IronHorse had not released a new song in 20 years, but those guys are still family. And that group of fans that we built over that 7-year period in IronHorse are still family. Steeler, you can't have KEELWORLD without a new Steeler track. It really starts with writing the songs. And I had this batch of songs, and I knew that even the Steeler track, Give Me Guitars or Give Me Death, which is a kind of a cheesy metal 80s rock anthem, it still could be done by the Ron Keel Band. It could have been a Ron Keel Band album, but thanks to the support of all of my friends in Keel, IronHorse, and Steeler, we were able to get those bands back together and record new music for KEELWORLD, and I'm extremely proud of the results.
Absolutely. And one thing I love about it is, as you said, certain songs could be performed by different incarnations of the music you have played with different people. But as much as it's all over the place musically in some ways, because you do country, you do, heavier stuff, you do more mainstream hard rock, there is a cohesion on the album and really kind of showcases certainly your versatility, but gives, like I said, that beautiful spotlight to your history. So somebody who's kind of entering the picture now and discovering Keel, I think it does, or Ron Keel, the Keel world, as we call it. It's a nice introduction to your history, but in such a cool way, because you're not relying on, oh, here's what we did 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Here are some of the guys and the brothers, but we're doing something new, which leads me to Steeler, because the highlight for me being a Steeler fan is hearing new Steeler music for the first time in 40 years. And this incarnation of Steeler on the album, you have Rick Fox, Mitch Perry, Dwayne from Keel was on drums. Now, as I understand, there's going to be a video for the track, and you've got Mark Edwards participating in that, correct?
Mark Edwards plays in the video. Dwayne Miller did the track, and this is a great story. Mark Edwards, who was a member of Steeler on that album during the classic lineup era with myself, Rick Fox, and Yngwie Malmsteen. Once the band exploded and we kind of went our separate ways, Mark formed a band called Lion,
Right,
with Doug Aldrich, Cal Swan, Jerry Best, and had a major label record deal. They were just on the edge of hitting the big time when Mark was seriously injured in a motorcycle accident. I mean, seriously injured, a year in the hospital, and was unable to play again. And I'm sure he's picked up the sticks a few times and just kind of hit the drums because it feels good or whatever. But in terms of pursuing being a drummer, he hasn't done that for over 3 decades. But when I played him the song and I told him, this is the new Steeler song, and he heard the track, he got really excited about the song, Give Me Guitars or Give Me Death, and took it upon himself. And he says, I want to play in the video. Went into serious training 4 hours a day, getting his chops back, pounding on the kit, sent his wife and kids to the beach house, and just literally hunkered down on the old Steeler kit. I mean, he's got his old drum kit back, and he's got his chops back, and he's just crushing it in this new video, which is going to be released on Black Friday in conjunction with the vinyl edition of KEELWORLD. So it really is great to have that Steeler legacy. Put an exclamation point on that with this great new track. And it's a song about that era, that genre, the guitar heroes from Malmsteen to Van Halen to Jimmy Page. It really pays tribute to that style, that era. And I'm just really proud that we could find the song and that the guys were all on board to contribute. Mitch Perry on guitar. Nobody's going to miss Yngwie when they hear this, trust me.
Well, I'm most excited to see Mark in the video. I'm a huge fan of his. When I was coming up as a drummer myself, it was during this era, the Keel era, the Lion era. Mark also played in the great band Riot for a time, and I always thought that he was one of the tragic kind of unsung players of the time because of what happened to him. He really could have been one of those guys to have that fantastic career. So to see him in 2024 participating in Steeler in some way is it's a real beautiful thing. I'm glad
it
that
really is, man. And to be there at that video shoot, it was a big deal, man. A big production. And I do believe it's going to compete with some of the best metal videos of all time. It's not just four guys in a room playing music. It is a spectacle. And I can't wait to show this new Steeler video to everyone on Black Friday.
Excellent. Of course, this whole Steeler conversation begs the question, now that there has been a new song, you've reconvened in some way to make this happen. Do you foresee additional activities under the Steeler banner moving forward?
You know, I kind of take it one song at a time, man. I have a band called the Ron Keel Band that can play anything off this record and anything from my career. And we do Steeler in the show. We do Sabbath. We do Keel. There's 9, 10 Keel songs in the show. My band can do whatever I need them to do. And I believe in, you know, it's a well-oiled machine. 10 years together, heavy rehearsals, a heavy touring schedule to just pursue Steeler as a new entity. And I know there are going to be offers with this thing. We're going to get opportunities. The phone's going to ring, the emails are going to explode, and they're going to say the same, they're going to ask the same question you just asked. What about Steeler? We want Steeler. And it's not off the table. Never say never at this stage of the game for me. Never say never, and we have done some shows. We did the Keel Fest gigs, you know, 2019 and 2023. It was Steeler live on stage, but we'll take it one song at a time and see how it goes. I know the new Steeler song is going to become a staple in the Ron Keel Band show. That's for sure. And Moving Target, the new Keel song as well.
Well, it's interesting with Keel because obviously you had your burst of activity in the 80s. There was a long stretch of time you weren't working together, but you later addressed that and reformed and have done, music since, since the glory days, let's say. And you've got this new track now, and it's pretty much the classic lineup. What keeps that entity something that for you it's worth revisiting as the
Well,
year?
it's the brotherhood. It's the friendship and the brotherhood and the music. The fact that we've had 40 years of history together. We'll be celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Right to Rock in 2025. And we're family. We're, best of friends, and there's a lot of love there. So that makes the music a lot easier. When Mark Ferrari sent me the music for Moving Target, he had said, I got this new song. He sent it to me. It's obvious when you hear it, it's a Keel song. All I had to do was find the right words and melody and do a Keel style vocal treatment on Moving Target, and it's magic. It's lightning in a bottle. So really, really proud that there is new Keel music on KEELWORLD. It wouldn't be complete without it. And it's one of the best songs we've ever done.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to move into where you are now in the industry as far as being your sort of self-contained entity. And you've maintained a pretty active and eclectic career post the 80s time. And I want to make that point very clear that you've been in the industry since that time in various forms. Currently, the KEELWORLD album you put out under your own label. And I want to get into that with you because the industry that I experienced as a fan seeing you for the first time in 1987 is an industry that no longer exists. It's changed considerably since that time. When you look at where things are now, because you are so active, doing your label, doing your radio, everything that you're involved in, what do you see as some of the biggest changes and maybe even advantages to where things are now versus where they were in the mid 80s when it was a much bigger machinery rolling things forward?
It has changed. It's not the same business that I got into 40, 50 years ago, but there are still the fundamental rules of success in any business, life, relationships, business. You've got to change with the times. You've got to find a way to continue to deliver a good product. You got to work your ass off. That hard work ethic and having something that's worth selling is important. And we've done that with RFK Media and some amazing projects. Cold Sweat with Mark Ferrari and Roy Cathy and the gang. That Cold Sweat Unburied Alive album that we released earlier this year has really taken off. Those guys are playing some big festival events. We're selling product, and we're doing really well with that. KEELWORLD is the logical next step for me to own and control my own business. Is not that far of a stretch. I've been doing business all my life. We had a label, High Vol Music, in 2020 that released the South by South Dakota album. Bill Chavis is a dear friend of mine. And this is during the pandemic. Bill was young, healthy, vibrant, went in the hospital and never came out, died of COVID. And his wife, Lori, passed away within a couple of weeks so they both died. Right as we were on the edge of working on these new songs and thinking about this next album project. And rather than sign with another label, and I could have received an advance from, a couple of labels out there that would have given us the money to finance this thing. I just thought it was important to get out of the back seat, take the wheel, and use my business experience, my knowledge, my passion, and because I think we've got the brains, the balls, and the energy to do it and do it right. And so far, it's working.
Excellent, fantastic. And I'm glad you mentioned Bill and Lori. I worked with them both in different projects in the years prior. So very sad loss, and
Yeah,
I'm glad their names were spoken in this conversation. Great people, good label who helped keep this genre moving. And
yeah.
that's another thing I wanted to bring up with you is the fact that a lot of the artists who were working in the 80s when this genre was at its peak, fortunately, many of them are still out there doing it. They're touring. I know Europe has, for a lot of people, been a very welcoming part of the world for this style of music. You do various genres, but I know you still have a hard rock heart in a lot of ways. Looking back at it now, because you've been doing it for so many years, what is it about this style of music that still maintains this much relevance in 2024? We saw grunge come and go. We saw this genre, that genre come and go. But there's something about hard rock and metal that really does seem eternal at this point.
It resonates with the young at heart and the young. I mean, we have a lot of fans that are just kids, man, literally 10, 12 years old, like you were when you first saw us with Bon Jovi at the Meadowlands. There are kids that are coming to the shows and the music resonates with them. They don't have to know the history. As long as they're feeling the message and the power and the energy and the strength, I think this music empowers us and gives us some kind of, it gives us the hope and the belief that we are young, we are strong, we are wild, we are free. I mean, these are parts of lyrics of hundreds of songs that you and I grew up listening to. And those messages never die.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Away from hard rock and metal, you've had an ongoing career in country music, which when I first discovered many years ago you were doing that, it kind of took me by surprise because I was used to the Right to Rock and the Keel era. But I have to say, I've really grown to be a fan of your more country leaning output, and there's some great material on KEELWORLD in that direction, including a single that is one of my favorite songs of 2024, The Last Bottle on Earth. It's just a gorgeous number, beautiful song. So I wanted to kind of go there for a minute and see what led you or inspired you to create that song, and why it makes such a great addition to KEELWORLD.
Well, I appreciate that. I think it might be the best song I've ever written. But the only reason anybody would think it's a country song is because I'm wearing a cowboy hat in the video. That's the only country thing about the tune. To me, I equate it with extremes, More Than Words, or Mr. Biggs, I'm the One Who Wants to Be With You. I mean, an acoustic ballad, Judas Priest's Before the Dawn. I mean, it's an acoustic ballad. But the only reason people are getting a country perception is because I got a cowboy hat on. It's not a country song. It's a rock ballad. And the inspiration came from the desire to express what I truly feel is that we're all on a one-day contract. Tomorrow is not guaranteed to any of us. It was good while it lasted. It'll still be good when it's gone. But I want to enjoy every moment, every song, every kiss, every step, every mile along this journey. And that's what the song is telling me, and hopefully telling the listener as well, that it's not about liquor. The bottle is a metaphor for life. I want to drink you up like you're the last bottle on earth. And it's an important song for me. And it was released as the first single only because I was doing it in my live shows. When I do a lot of solo acoustic performances, I put it in the show, and people started to call the venue and say, "Is Ron Keel on yet? Tell him we're running late. Don't let him play Last Bottle on Earth until we get there." And then, I got fans that were, of course, cell phone videos from the gig started to get around, and people wanted to use it in their wedding, which is a huge honor and a thrill. So I went ahead and finished that one. First, it was easier to finish because it's just an acoustic ballad. So I got that one done, got it out there in January of this year, and it has been become a part of people's lives, and it's been played at weddings and other special occasions like that. So that's a real honor for me to close this album with The Last Bottle on Earth. I think it's fitting to have the last song be that, just me and the guitar and the message, and try and give people some hope. If you live in the past, you die in the past, and every line of the lyric. And that's one thing it does have in common with country music, Joel, is that every line means something. That's one lesson I took from country music when I embraced the art form and immersed myself in it in the 90s, is that there are no throwaway lines in a lyric. In a rock song, you can, as long as it rhymes and it kind of fits, and you can throw a lyric in there on a metal song. I do the same thing on Moving Target. It's a little cheesy. It's 80s Keel music, so it fits. It belongs there. But in any kind of country music, every line has to matter. It has to mean something. There's no room for just a throwaway line just because it rhymes. It's got to say something. It's got to speak to your heart. It's got to come from the heart, and it's got to speak to your heart. So that is one of the country elements that I use not only in The Last Bottle on Earth, but every song that I write now.
Excellent, excellent. And I've seen you in interviews over the years, dating back to the golden age of Keel. And obviously we're having a conversation now. And one thing that's always struck me, Ron, about the way you carry yourself in interviews and in media, and just your attitude, it's always struck me as incredibly positive and very enthusiastic. And it's a joy to know that in 2024, you still have that perspective. And I bring that up because obviously the music industry is not kind, and hasn't been kind to a lot of our mutual friends, certainly, we'll put it that way. The industry breaks a lot of hearts, and you're still incredibly active at this stage of your career. For you, what has been the key to keeping that perspective to where you haven't fallen off the tracks?
That's easy, man. It's a choice you make every day when you wake up first thing in the morning. Before I even open my eyes, the first thing I do is I tell my wife, I love you today. And then I tell myself, today I'm going to kick ass. I'm going to be positive. I'm going to be hardworking. I'm going to be energetic. I'm going to be creative. I'm going to build something, create something. I'm going to work out. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to do some of the things that feed my soul. And it's a choice to be positive, to be strong, to be tough, to work hard, to keep my voice in shape, to get in the basement 4 hours a day and sing and play and rehearse. That's it's not easy, and sometimes it's not even fun, but it's got to happen. And I feel better knowing that it's like medicine. It tastes terrible. You don't like it going down, but it's going to make you feel better after you do it. It's so being positive, music, and that positive attitude, that's my medicine that I feed myself every day.
Fantastic, man. Fantastic. Well, it certainly comes through in your attitude, and perhaps most importantly, it comes through in the music too on Keel World.
Thank you.
That's what I love about it. This isn't a nostalgia trip. This is music in the here and now by people in your history, but it feels to me very much like a 2024 album. And I think that's, what the viewer needs to know if they haven't checked in with you for a while. This is the album to check out because it's offering some very interesting things now. And when I first heard it, I felt the same way I did back in '87 when I first saw you live. So it's cool that you've maintained that all these years when, a lot of guys have struggled with that. So,
Well, thank you. It is a great collection of songs. That it has to be, every song has to be worthy of a spot on this record. And also, I think it's really important, and you've touched on this briefly, it has a cohesive sonic identity. It doesn't sound like a mishmash of different sounds and different, it's not a bunch of demos or outtakes. That's because I was really cognizant of that fact. When you're doing a record that's this diverse and you've got metal and you've got country all in the same record, it's got to flow. Every song has to be able to follow the next one. You've got Faster Horses leading into the Children of the Grave from Sabbath, and you've got, it's very diverse. So I used the same microphone for the most of the session. It's the same microphone, the same engineer, the same mix guy, Mike Dresch, my co-producer, mixed the entire record, and he knew it was his task to achieve that sonic identity, to make sure that not all the drum sounds are exactly the same, or not all everybody sent different files from the different studios and the different sessions. And it was Mike's job to make sure that everything sounded like it belonged on the same record. It's cohesive, and it's got an identity that each song flows into the next seamlessly. So that was difficult to achieve, and I couldn't have done it without my co-producer, Mike Dresch.
excellent, excellent. I want to mention as well, because I'm hoping this video will serve as a way to have my viewers catch up with you, because I have a lot of old school hard rock fans
Right
who
on.
subscribe and check out the older stuff. So it's always a nice opportunity to bring people up to speed where things are. I guess it was about a decade ago, you had put out a fantastic book called Even Keel, which is your autobiography. And it's a great read. It's got a great history, and you don't sugarcoat a lot. You're pretty straightforward with things and very honest and open about the way things were. And I won't reveal too much because I want people to go out and check it out and read it. But I am curious, I'm a writer myself, and when I look back 10 years after something I've written, um, I always think, oh, it could have gone this way or it should have been that way. Now that you've had the hindsight of a decade with Even Keel, what are your thoughts on the book now? What are some, how do you feel looking at it now versus when you finished it 10 years ago?
When I started on the Patreon platform, patreon.com/Ron Keel, this was during my wife's battle with cancer, when I had to cancel a year's worth of touring and stay home with her and be there for the chemo treatments and the radiation and the 9, 10 surgeries, whatever it was. I developed a site on Patreon, which is a subscription site, which the fans subscribe to. And it's an amazing tribe of Keelaholics now, 6 years later, that it's a family. It's the Keelaholics. It's not a fan club, it's a family. And I thought one of the perks that I could offer them would be the audiobook version of Even Keel.
Mhm.
So I started reading the audiobook, and I got to about chapter 13, where it was the Hollywood days, the Steeler Keel era. And I realized that so much has happened. And some of the people that I talk about from that era, whether it's Rick Fox or Michael Dunnigan, the original guitar player in Steeler, and some of these people that I hadn't seen in decades, now we've rekindled our friendships. We're working together on projects. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be resaid. So I got to about chapter 13, 14, and I realized, man, I got to rewrite this book. Is
Mm.
it, and there's 10 years that's gone by since I published the book that there's a lot of stories left to tell with the Ron Keel Band and all of the stuff that we've done the last 10 years. So I am rewriting the book now, revising it, not too much of an overhaul. I, I, I think I want to keep those elements that you mentioned that are honest and true. And I throw myself under the bus pretty heavily in the book. I don't call out my ex-bandmates. I don't call out my ex-wife. I, she's the mother of my children, so I'll just shut the hell up and, just not go there. And I think I'll keep all that the same, but fill in some of the blanks and some of the relationships that have been rekindled over the last 10 years. And I'm looking forward to getting that published. As you know, as a writer, it's a long, tireless process of staying up all night, falling asleep at the keyboard, and proofreading and editing and trying to make sure that it's entertaining. I mean, it's got to be a fun ride. It's got to be a good read, as you said. It's got to be fun and entertaining, but it's also got to be honest and real, and that's a tough task. So I look forward to finishing the rewrite of Even Keel and getting that published, hopefully for the holidays, early next year, maybe at the latest.
Excellent. Great. Great. Yeah, I would encourage anyone who hasn't read the current incarnation to keep the new version in mind because, like I said, Ron, I read a lot of rock books and a lot of autobiographies, and yours is definitely in my top five. I mean,
Thank you. That means a lot to me. And I thought it was important in the book to stick to the journey and the struggles and yeah, there's drugs and sex, but I really kept that to a minimum. I thought, I'm kind of glossing over a lot of that stuff, and there's a lot of stories that I didn't tell. And then I started doing interviews to promote the book 10 years ago, and the first thing the guy would say is, "Man, there's a lot of sex and drugs in this book." It's like, dude, I thought I left that shit out, but apparently, there's enough of it to satisfy anyone who's looking for some of those 80s Sunset Strip debauchery and, sex, drugs, rock and roll is all part of the game. And I tried to keep the focus on the rock and roll as much as I could.
hmm. Well, let me ask you a question, because obviously, all music scenes in hindsight have a little bit of myth building around them. I grew up in the New Jersey punk scene, for example, in the 90s. And, I touch base with those guys today. And, the fight may have been three people in 1996, but now it's a 50-person fight in the bar, and things get
Yeah.
exaggerated. Um, how crazy really was it in LA? I mean, are the legends largely true, or is there a little bit of cinema happening in glorious hindsight here?
Every band was different, but the common thread between all of us was that it really was very competitive. In Hollywood on the Sunset Strip in 1982, 83, nobody had anything to eat. We were all in the same boat, us, Motley Crue, Rat. We were all struggling, and all those guys, all those bands, from Great White to Motley Crue, Rat, Quiet Riot, Kevin DuBrow, my band Steeler. We were focused on trying to win the game. I mean, it was a tough game, and at that time, nobody had a record deal, and somebody had to go first. Uh, we were fighting for the ticket sales and the chicks and the drugs and the parties and the fighting for a space on a phone pole where you
Right.
Poison's there and you got to tack up your flyer on top of their flyer. So it was very competitive. Now, all those guys that have survived are a brotherhood and a family of like alumni that went through it, even though we weren't on the same team back then. We are now.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. Going back to Keel World, you do have a project featured on the album called Emerald Sabbath. And that's something that's been around for a while now. I think I first heard about it maybe about 6 or so years ago. It's a tribute to Black Sabbath, and it features a variety of people who have connections to the Sabbath family and the Sabbath history. You perform on the album "Children of the Grave," and you've got Bobby Rondinelli, who was a Sabbath drummer, as well as Neil Murray. And I know people like Dave Walker have been involved in Emerald Sabbath, and it's a really cool concept that really aims to represent what kind of interests me about Sabbath, which is not the standard story, because there's a lot of different chapters and different people who've come and gone. So it kind of presents that alternative side to Sabbath. So how did you get involved in participating in Emerald Sabbath, and why was that a great thing to include on KEELWORLD?
Well, like you said, about 6 years ago, Mike Sullivan, hope I'm pronouncing his name right, Mad Mike, probably the biggest Sabbath fan on the planet, was the executive producer on this project. And it's become common knowledge through the books and the websites, black-sabbath.com. I'm included in their lineup. And I never really made a big deal out of it until those books started coming out, and people were asking questions like this in every interview that I do. And so I had a signed contract. I met with Tony and Geezer daily in 1984, met with Don Arden, their manager, Sharon Osbourne's father, who was managing Sabbath at the time. We had a deal in place, and I was in the band, even though I never toured with them or recorded with them. So I've become a very, very small, tiny thread in the history of the greatest metal band of all time. So Mad Mike reached out to me and wanted to include me on the Emerald Sabbath project and asked me to sing Trashed, the Gillan song from Born Again. And I did that session. It went great. He says, well, how about Hole in the Sky and Die Young? So I got to sing 3 tracks on that first Emerald Sabbath album, an Ian Gillan track from Born Again, Trashed, an Ozzy song, Hole in the Sky, and I got to cover Ronnie James Dio from the Heaven and Hell album on a song called Die Young, and Vinny Appice on the drums, who played on the Heaven and Hell record, Rudy Sarzo on bass, Vinny on drums. So an amazing opportunity. I'm really proud of that record, proud of those sessions, proud of the vocals. I think, and Ronnie Dio was a friend of mine. I think he would give his nod of approval to what I did on that record. I'm really proud of it. And then it came time to do Volume 2. Mike is now working on Emerald Sabbath Volume 2. And he reaches out and says, Ron, I want you to sing Children of the Grave. And I said, man, I would love to. Thank you. Let's do it. However, I'll do the session for free, because he paid me really well for those first 3 songs. That was a good paying session. I was glad to do it, but the money helped too. At this one, I said, I'll do Children of the Grave for free if you let me put it on KEELWORLD. And he was cool enough to say, yes, please go ahead. Bobby Rondinelli, Neil Murray on bass. I mean, you got 2 ex-Sabbath members who toured with Sabbath during the 90s that never recorded together with Sabbath. And now they're with me and Dave Cawthorn and Mike Dresch on guitar on this KEELWORLD record. I thought it was important to touch on that piece of history and include Sabbath on KEELWORLD, and I'm really proud of the results.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a killer track, absolute killer. It is interesting because years have gone by where I don't think even the diehard Sabbath guys knew you had a stint with them. I certainly didn't for the longest time. So very much to your credit, Ron, that you weren't billing, yourself ever really as ex Black Sabbath. And there are certain people who had kind of a tenuous relationship with them who kind of went that way for a while. But you never really did. And it's kind of interesting too, because had you joined Sabbath, my guess would be you would have been fronting Tony Iommi's band. Period. Now, because that didn't work out with Tony, you ended up fronting your own band. So I guess in a lot of ways you kind of won.
No, I would have crushed it, man. I had that gig down. I'm telling you, in rehearsals, I was the dark side, man. It wasn't the nice, fun, positive Ron Keel. It was the fucking evil bastard with the horns and the cross and the. I was Sabbath all the way. I had the gig down. It would have been. It's always going to be Tony's band, but I embraced my dark side during that rehearsal period when I was literally going to be the next singer in Sabbath, and for whatever reason, I think it would have been really successful. I think it would have been a new era for Sabbath. And that's just my confidence speaking. I thought my voice and that combination of me really embracing their history and not trying to be the Ron Keel, you know, because I'm my show is all smiles and high fives and running around and yeah, we're having a good time. That was not the Sabbath gig. It was mean, it was dark, it was angry, it was scary, and I embraced that role like an actor would. And I could have been I could have been the dude. I think I would have done a great job, and who knows what would have happened. But then my life would have taken a totally different path. And I'm extremely happy that I'm where I'm at now. I'm comfortable in my own skin. I've had a great ride, and I can still include some Sabbath songs in my show and on the new album, Keel World.
Yep, absolutely. There you go. I could hear the voices of the viewer who doesn't know the history, looking at the screen going, what happened? What happened? I know what happened, as far as your time with Sabbath. But if we can give kind of a Cliff Notes version of, why the Sabbath relationship was the duration ended up being.
Well, they had hired Spencer Proper to produce the new Sabbath album. This is after Born Again. And all of a sudden, Spencer was the hot ticket. He had produced Quiet Riot's Mental Health album, which sold, 10, 18, 20 million, whatever. And he was the hot guy in Hollywood. I mean, he had taken metal to the #1 spot on the Billboard chart. So Spencer was the man. And he was my manager. He owned the studio where we were recording the original Keel demos. And he heard my voice through the walls as he was walking down the hallway, and I'm in the studio cutting tracks, and he started brought me into his office, started talking about he's producing the new Sabbath record. I think he'd be perfect for this gig, and he kind of brokered the whole deal. And he was trying to turn Sabbath into an 80s hair band with outside songs, hit singles, and that's not Sabbath, man. Tony and Geezer weren't having any of it. And so when they fired Spencer, I got caught in the crossfire.
Right. Was this with Bev on drums?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, Bev on drums. And Bev is actually on Keel World as well. He plays percussion on Embryo.
Very cool.
Yeah, so Bev's part of the Keel World family now too. A great guy, and that was a very small 2-week period in my life that will never die. I'm always going to be talking about it. Might as well sing it. So we put some Sabbath songs in the show, put one on Keel World, and keep that appreciation and respect and honor. I mean, that band changed my life when I saw them on TV. I think it was Paranoid at Don Kirshner's rock concert or something when I was 10 years old. It's kind of like you seeing me with Bon Jovi. That was really life-changing to see Sabbath. And, I went out and bought their records and grew up singing that stuff. And, Paranoid is, every cover band does Paranoid, right? And War Pigs and all those. I mean, I've been singing them since I was a kid. So just to be a very small thread in that Sabbath history is a true honor. And I think the fans understand my take on it. And the Emerald Sabbath project gave me a chance to finally sing those songs. And this is what I would have done vocally had I been the guy. Of course, it's 40 years later. So the voice has changed a little bit, but it's still, I think I'm very faithful to the Ozzy tracks, especially you might think that, speaking from a vocal standpoint, that the Dio stuff is really difficult and the Ozzy stuff is really easy, but the Ozzy tracks are the most challenging. The Hole in the Sky was the toughest song I did on the whole session, I think, just because that's an iconic voice. Now Dio that's Ronnie James Dio, but I think that I'm not even comparing myself to Ronnie, but it was easier to lay down the Dio vocals than it was the Ozzy vocals, just for me, because that Ozzy has that special character that you can't just sing it like Ron Keel. You gotta put some Ozzy in there, and that's what I did.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a fantastic recording with great players, as all the songs are on Keel World. And I'm glad that we waited until now to have this conversation. I think the album uh not only excites me as a longtime fan, but like I said before, really does serve as a great introduction to who you are as an artist and what you've done. I do have one question about Keel World. I am curious as to why Fair Game was included in some way.
I tried, and I did have some meetings with the girls, and I would have loved to have had Fair Game on the record. Logistically, it didn't work out, and musically, we couldn't agree on a song.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm not used to, I'm not very diplomatic when it comes down to that. I mean, I wrote the Steelers song, and I told the guys, "Hey, this is the new Steelers song," and they're okay, and they kicked ass, and they played it, and they crushed it. The Ron Keel Band can and does do whatever I ask them to do. You know, if I mean, and it's not that I rule with an iron fist. I love the collaboration, the teamwork, and let the players play and let them contribute and all that. But when it comes to choosing the songs, I want to be the guy that does that. And the girls were, uh, they didn't. None of the material I presented them with really grabbed them, and uh, I wish that we were able to include Fair Game on the record, but uh, yeah, I have a lot of unfinished business. I will leave this world with a long, long to-do list. And yeah, if that's the most thing that I left on the loose thread, then I'm cool with that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as far as your to-do list for the rest of 2024, in addition to Keel World coming out August 2nd, vinyl Black Friday, um, what does the rest of your year look like? What are some things that we can look forward to from you?
Well, the that Black Friday is a red letter day on my calendar. It's circled in red because we've got the new Steeler video and single premiering on that day in conjunction with the vinyl release. Two vinyl editions, one single vinyl and one double edition vinyl with all the bonus tracks. So you've got two variants of the vinyl. We've got some shows coming up. We got some big gigs, where the band's not finished for the year yet. And I plan to aggressively, I'll be doing a lot of interviews like this. Man, I'll tell you, this is what my day looks like. Me and Joel shooting the shit on the Zoom call. I mean, literally a lot of promotion, a lot of marketing, running the label, continuing to build KRFK Radio.com into the really big important part of our empire that's become. We've got 40,000 people listening right now, and it is to me uh, a great vehicle to entertain people 24/7 from home or from the road, wherever I am. We've got the best syndicated shows: Eddie Trunk, Dee Snider, Charlie Kendall's Metal Shop, the Joe Elliott Show, and a lot of other syndicated programs. I'm going to get back on the horse now. I've been on hiatus from my radio show,
Mhm.
trying to finish the album, and now that that's done, I'm going to get back on the air myself and continue to produce season 13 of the Streets of Rock and Roll radio show. We're going to start booking gigs for next year. I don't think I'm done yet. I know that there's been some talk about retirement. I did bill the Hollywood and Vegas gigs as my final Hollywood and Las Vegas appearances when we were there a couple of months ago. And I'm not sure where that live performing, man, I don't know where that's going to take me. I'm scared to quit, Joel. I'm scared to quit because I don't know if I can live with that guy if he stops. And it's Ron Keel, man. He doesn't stop or quit or slow down, but I'm scared to keep going because I want to finish strong. I
Right.
want to go out. Always thought I'd be the guy to win the barroom brawl and then ride off into the sunset with the hot girl, but I can't write my own script. I just know that last show, whenever it is, it's got to be strong, man. I'm not going to go out limping. I'm going to go out kicking and screaming just like I came in.
Excellent, man. Well, again, check out the new album, Keel World. I will include all kinds of links in the video description so viewers can check out what Ron's doing. And there's always a lot going on in your world. I appreciate you giving me some time to bring me up to speed on things. Thank you for the new album. Thank you for bringing Mark Edwards back to the spotlight. That's fantastic. I'm really looking forward to that video.
Yeah. Well, I
Um,
thank you for the opportunity to talk about all this and all the great stuff that you do to help keep our business alive, Joel. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate that. And I will see you on the road at some point. I can't wait to check out the video. And I just wish you the very best moving forward and best to your missus as well.
Thank you, brother.